मनसि प्रतिष्ठिता मनो मे वाचि प्रतिष्ठितम् आविराविर्मयेधि वेदस्य मणिस्थ श्रुतं मे मा प्रहासीः अनेनाधीतेनाहोरात्रान् सन्दधामि ऋतं वदिष्यामि सत्यं वदिष्यामि तन्मामवतु तद्वक्तारमवतु अवतु माम् अवतु वक्तारमवतु वक्तारम् ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः Om. May my speech be firmly established in my mind. May the mind too be firmly established in my speech. May there be perfect correspondence between my thoughts, words, and actions. May the truths of the scriptures come to me. May the self-effulgent Lord shine forth in my life. May not what I learn from scriptures ever forsake me. Let me live my life day and night according to their teachings. I shall speak what is appropriate. I shall speak the truth. May that protect me. May that protect the teacher. Om. Peace, peace, peace. Let us feel our true divine nature in our heart. As the most beautiful flower that is attracting everybody. God is all love. The source of all attraction. Let me feel that I am feeling that attraction. It is inexplicable. I am just pulled towards this. Like a moth being pulled to a candle flame. This attraction is irresistible. As I get closer and closer, it increases. I am feeling the glory of the divine reflected on me. I come still closer. There is a moment's hesitation. A momentary fear. What will happen to me? But I am drawn towards it. I am pulled, sucked into it. I am dissolved, gone. God alone is. Om. Peace, peace, peace. So, dear friends, let us begin or let us continue the discussion on this very touching and illuminating chapter in this divine play of Sri Ramakrishna, the chapter on Aghormani Devi or Gopal-Ma or Gopal's Ma. So, we shall begin as usual with the opening chant. Tava kathamritam tapta jivanam kavibhiriditam kalmashapaham श्रवणमङ्गलं श्रीमदाततं भुवि गृह्णन्ति ते भूरिदा जनाः। We read a little bit from this story on last Tuesday, and let us continue. Some recapitulation will be there. We have to remember next time, I will put some pictures of Aghormani Devi's, this little village and the temple and some such places around to get a feel of that place. A very old style village in Bengal, a tradition of Vaishnava and Shakta. Both traditions are strongly going in that region, and Aghormani Devi, she became widowed at a very early age. So a widowed life, a life of a widow of that time needs to be kept in mind. A widow from a higher caste in the society has many restrictions, and certainly in modern times with the lot of this movements about the rights of women and all that going on, many of these things would be felt terribly bad. But there is a very good side to it. Many times the baby gets thrown along with the bath water. So the good sides of that, the good impact of that, that should not be forgotten. Especially when we see that the purpose of human life is not to have the sensory enjoyments, but to realize God. And so whatever helps to realize that goal is helpful and is thus good. Whatever hinders it is not good. So there were many restrictions put by the society, especially the upper castes, on the widows' lives. And there was lot of physical and mental suffering that they had to endure. There is no doubt about that. But there is another side to it, that it would guide their life on a divine path. It is, if there is no other path easily open, then one gets, by force go on this path. And a few of the women made very good use of that opportunity. This Gopal-Ma and also her landlady, they are very good examples. Let me read something on page 674. The landlady invited Sri Ramakrishna to visit her at the Kamarhati temple. The master promised to go there when it was convenient for him. Master spoke highly of the landlady and Gopal-Ma that day. He said, "Ah, what beautiful expressions on their faces! They are floating in the ocean of bliss and devotion. Their eyes are soaked with divine love. Even the tilak, the holy mark on their noses, is beautiful." In other words, they were not ostentatious. Their devout nature appeared in their manners and in the way they dressed, with no special effort on their part. This is what happens. The life becomes joyous, not because there are lot of material comforts and lot of opportunities, so called, to enjoy the things, the sensual things around. That only adds more and more bondages to one's life. But when one gets in touch with this inner divine love, which is full of bliss, then the life becomes blissful in spite of so many material these difficulties or lack of things around, restrictions and so forth. Yet the life becomes blissful because of that. And I have seen it in many people, that when this touch comes, all the life becomes meaningful. You feel that joy in your whole body, as it were, appearing in everything. The actions become like that. The general manners that the person follows, they also exude that kind of bliss through them. This is something that is quite easily understandable. Once we realize that all those cravings in us for material things, when we get them, it only increases the thirst. Just as you cannot quench a fire by adding fuel to it, adding the so-called objects of enjoyment to the fire of craving does not remove it at all, rather the opposite. And so we see people all over running after here and there, and thus always tense. It is, Swami Yatishwaranandaji remarks, that it is thus very difficult to see on the streets a happy face. The faces are strained because of all these compulsions, not by the society, but by their own cravings writ large on their face. So it is thus Sri Ramakrishna could not but make this remark, that how this devotion was getting spontaneously expressed in these two ladies' appearance, manners, that God's beauty was as it were coming out, although they were the attire that the widows have to put on as a matter of social restriction is the most unattractive kind of clothing. So it is meant to be like that. So, but still there is that inner beauty and love and joy that comes out due to the touch of that which is full of bliss, full of love and beauty. And God is the source of all beauty. You can read in the spiritual canticle of soul by Saint John, which is very similar to what we have like Rasa Leela in Bhagavatam. Very similar to that. It says there that the beloved has run away and the lover is looking for that. Where have you gone? And then she looks at for these plants, flowering plants, and then says that he must have passed by you because of his touch. Now you have become so beautiful because he is the source of beauty, and while passing by you must have got his touch that has endowed you with such beauty. So it is this which makes things lovable, beautiful, and so forth, you say. So it is these two ladies, they were full of this kind of divine presence in them. As I mentioned in the last class, the word are not at all sufficient to make any description of these things. One has to keep our feeling faculty very strongly waken up to receive this. So let us see what they are saying. Now some biographical details about both these ladies. Govinda Chandra Datta of Patan, agent for a European firm and well known in Kolkata. His efficiency and reliability made him very wealthy. Later in life, he was paralyzed and incapacitated by a stroke. Prior to this, his only son had died. His two daughters, Bhutto and Naran, had children. His only Govinda's property was considerable, so he was able to spend his time in spiritual discussions and activities. He arranged for discourses on the Ramayana and the Mahabharata to be held in his house, and also for the entire Bhagavata to be recited. He installed images of Radha and Krishna with great pomp in the garden at Kamarhati, and to Brahmins and poor he made generous gift of valuables equal to the weight of himself and his wife. Moreover, the temple celebrated many festivals all year around in connection with worship of the deities, and the prasad of Radha Krishna was distributed among guests and as well as among the poor and downtrodden people. After Govinda's death, for a long time his virtuous and devoted wife continued the worship services in a grand way. Later, however, the greater part of the property was lost for various reasons. So, to ensure that the worship service would not be neglected, the landlady lived in the temple garden and supervised all the activities. She was an old-fashioned woman. She underwent many sorrows and suffered much grief in her life. So she had a deep realization that the peace comes only through the practice of religion. But horrible Maya does not leave a person so easily. She had to care for her daughters and son-in-law and take into account society, status, honor, and other worldly concerns. After her husband's death, she strictly observed the vows of brahmacharya. That is, it has two meanings, both complementary to each other. Brahmacharya, the negative meaning is that continence, observance of this not having any sensual pleasures and all that, that is the negative part of it, don't do. The positive part is to hold on to God, hold on to Brahman. That is the meaning of brahmacharya. That means having the presence of Brahman in everything, moving in Brahman. So that is the meaning of the word brahmacharya, moving in Brahman. So that is the positive aspect of it. Both are complementary to each other. So it is thus she was strictly following that. As her devotion gradually increased, she felt a strong desire to live in the temple garden of the Ganges. With permission from the landlord, oh, this is, I skipped a part. And this Govinda's family priest lived very near the Kamarhati temple. Nila Madhav Bandyopadhyay, the priest, was well respected. His sister Aghormani Devi was known as Gopal-Ma. Aghormani Devi was the sister of this priest. She had been widowed when she was young and lived with her father's family. Because she closely associated with the landlady, Aghormani spent much of her time serving the deities in the Kamarhati temple. As her devotion gradually increased, she felt a strong desire to live in the temple garden on the Ganges. With permission from the landlady, she moved into one of the rooms in the women's quarters there. But she visited her family briefly once or twice a day. So see, the devotion gradually increased. It is not that we become fully devoted just on some fine morning. It is a matter of gradual increase, and as it increases, the lifestyle changes accordingly. It is this devotion to begin with may be very, very imperceptible, so little bit, but then as it grows, the things change. You get more and more enlightenment in life. Many more things appear earlier as insignificant start becoming more significant in life. The priorities become completely altered as the time rolls on, and as the devotion increases, this becomes the tangible effect in life. So one need not think that, oh, I don't have that much devotion. Okay, practice whatever little you have. We should practice whatever little we have. With practice, it grows. It is as we practice. They tell a story, maybe a little funny sounding, but the principle is very important. That there was a child, say about 9-10 years old, and then they had a cow at home. The cow gave birth to a little calf, and the child was very happy and used to play with that calf, would just lift it on his shoulders. It was very little, not much weight, and so the child would find it very nice to lift that calf on the shoulders. Now the calf grew, the child also grew. The child became a man, the calf became a cow, and still he could lift the cow on his shoulders. The point is, gradually your muscles acquire that kind of strength with practice. It is those who work, in different areas of skill, like construction, and it is once that man had that polishing the floor, that flooring, the tiles and all, a machine comes, and it is not very big in size, maybe like a bucket of this size. So appears to be okay, fine, but it is very, very heavy. It weighs about 200 pounds or more. So I tried to lift it, let alone lifting, it was difficult to budge. And then the man who was doing this work, he could lift it just like that, so as if it is something that is just 5-10 pounds, he could just lift like that. Now why it happens? Not because he was particularly strong. There would be many people who are stronger than him in various different ways, but it is the practice that brings out those particular strengths in one's personality. It is one carpenter, he said that, well, he does the carpentry, but he is not good with the putting this sheet rock on the ceiling. It is because he will require help, he cannot hold them. I said, you are very strong. Well, but I don't have that practice. Those sheet rock people are different, and they can easily lift that and put it there. I will require somebody, I can do that work, but I will require somebody to help me to hold it. I will not be able to do just by myself. It is, and that is true. Some others, they have the certain muscles, by practice they grow in strength. So this devotional muscle also, when it is given exercise, that, get it, Charlie, that devotional muscle, when it is given exercise, when it is given scope, it also grows in strength. The lot of devotion gets felt. As it gradually increases, the things change. It is, and anybody can see this. It is, I used to put some ankle weights, and then when I began, I put 2 pounds on each ankle, and that itself was, I was thinking it is a lot of weight. But then soon I got used to that, then I made it 5 pounds on each ankle, then 10 pounds on each ankle, and it became quite natural that I did not even feel that I have put 10 pounds extra weight on each ankle. I would just walk around. Once I went up to the 2 blocks away to Welland Square, those ankle weights were there. I didn't feel anything, because when you get habituated, your strength accordingly increases. So it is the practicing of that. As we have a little devotion, everybody has as little spark of devotion. When we fan that spark, when we give it scope to become bigger, when we add fuel to it accordingly, that devotion starts growing and our life gets changed according to that increased devotion. This does happen. So, let us have this confidence that whatever little devotion, I may have a very little devotion, but let me practice that, and it will thus grow on its own, like a small this seedling, when properly cultivated, gradually grows and becomes a gigantic tree, exactly like that. So, Agormani and the landlady shared a passion for practicing austerities and brahmacharya. So, there was a similarity of thought and feeling between them. As a wealthy woman, the landlady outwardly had to maintain her social status, but Agormani was free from those burdensome obligations because she owned almost nothing and had no children. Agormani had sold her jewellery and her husband's property and had received 6 or 700 rupees of that time, So, it is which she had invested in securities and left in the landlady's care. So, Agormani lived on the interest from her savings. Sometimes in dire need, she was forced to draw on her capital a little. The landlady helped her and her brother's family in every possible way. Agormani was a child widow and knew nothing about the joys of a husband's company. Women say child widows are so fastidious that they wash even their salt before using it. Everything has to be washed. The problem is, many times the water with which they are washing it may not be very clean. So, it is, but the ritual has to be followed to the letter. Even the water has to be used to wash the salt that they are using. Now, imagine what will happen to the poor salt. So, if you are, so it is somewhat taunting, sarcastic remark, but it underlies the fact that they are very, very fastidious. It is here some examples are given, and in my life also I have seen some of them very, very fastidious. It is you touch something and then wow, you have to face their wrath, and that that lady also will have to suffer because of that, because somebody touched some pot that they are using, so that pot cannot be used anymore, and so she has to suffer. So, they have to be very careful. So, these restrictions, the logic behind it and all is very difficult to follow. It is not that everything in this whole system can be easily supported. There are the drawbacks associated with it, there is no doubt about it. But there is, as I mentioned, there is a good side to it. You remain very focused on certain things. You have a path now to go. You are not looking here and there, just following that path, howsoever tough it may be. So, Agormani was like that as she grew up. She was extreme in her religious customs and practices. For example, One day while she was serving rice from a pot onto Sri Ramakrishna's plate, the master's hand somehow touched the wooden spoon she was using. Aghormani could not eat the rice left in the pot, and she even threw that wooden spoon into Ganges. This happened during one of her early visits to the master. The transformation is worth noting, we will come to that, but after a time, as the devotion grew, now all these restrictions had no meaning whatever. They just were blown away. We will see about, look into that. There were 2 or 3 clay ovens in the Nahabat. This is another incident told, that in the Nahabat where Holy Mother used to stay and cook for Sri Ramakrishna, other guests and so forth. And then if Aghormani is there, she also had to cook her own food. But after Holy Mother has finished cooking, then that oven has to be all plastered with 3 layers of cow dung and Ganges water and so forth, and then the cooking can happen for her. So, because it is defiled, if something has already been, now where is the defiling, what touched it, it is all those questions do not arise there. It is the custom, and it is being followed with lot of faith and devotion associated with it. Some are like that. It is, if I have seen even some of our Swamis, they have that tendency. Again, the good part is that they have that focus, and that this is how it should be done. That is it. It is even the common things, we have lot of logical issues that come there, like putting on the face mask. That okay, many favor it greatly, many question its utilities, many say what is the point in putting the face mask now, and when I am in the company of so many people eating together, I take it out. Then yes, what is, so there are the logical questions associated with those, no doubt. So with these practices also there are the questions of the logical validities and such things, what do they give you? But one thing is clear, that okay, I do not want to waste my time in thinking about it. What do I lose if I put face mask? I do not lose face by putting face mask. So, why worry whether to put or not to put? Just put it, so that at least there is no such restriction that you cannot put face mask. So, let me put it on. It saves a lot of unnecessary back and forth worries and discussions and fights about it. So, these restrictions, what does it matter if I follow them? It is, I am not compelling you to follow, I am following. Why should it give you headache? It is, that is the problem that we have. If they are following these restrictions, why are you troubled by that? Let them follow. If you do not want to follow, you are free not to follow. You will of course have to bear certain consequences. That is it, just as putting following those restrictions, you have to bear certain consequences, not following them will have their own consequences. So, That is how this thing is. It is, I remember once that one of my colleagues, when I was in training center, he was very particular, not so particular, but still what should be touched, what not should not be touched, and so forth. So, he had a little small shrine in the room that he was living in there, and so, and he had some pot in which he would keep some these offerings to the deity, and then he wanted to give me what is called prasad. And then I said, okay, give me. And then he was giving from the pot. Then I touched the pot, and he was so, why did you touch the pot? That pot should not be touched like that. And he scolded me left and right. I also made a little more fun of him and so forth. But it is, the point is, that is their restrictions that they follow. Now, what he has to do, that he has to wash it, or in some cases discard and get another one, and so forth. So, that is how their life is. It is so. My grandmother used to observe certain such restrictions, and if as grandchildren we break some of those, she would get very upset that why did you do like this? And what happens is, as children we used to then deliberately do it to irritate her. So, it is, but the point that is here is that makes their life very streamlined. Don't bother about this and this, just follow, because this is not very important. So, from her childhood onward, Agormani was very sensitive. She could not bear anyone's criticism, and she could not ask anyone for financial help. In addition, she discovered, if she discovered any improprieties, she did not hesitate to speak out bluntly. So very few people got along with her. The room her landlady gave to her was at the southern part of the Kamarhati, that garden. One could see the Ganges through the 3 southern windows, and there were 2 doors, one on the north side and the other on the west. Agormani sat in her room watching the Ganges and repeating her mantra day and night. Thus she passed 30 years in that room, through happiness and misery, through happiness and misery, before she met Sri Ramakrishna. So 30 years, it is the practice was going on for 30 years. One becomes upset very easily, isn't it, Charlie? That nothing is happening, what happened, I said, so she didn't complain, go on doing it. So, it is possible that the family of Agormani's father was Shakta. We do not know the religious tradition of her husband's family. However, Agormani was devoted to Vishnu and received the Gopal mantra from her guru. Gopal means a cowherd. So, Krishna was cowherd. So, a name that is given to him is Gopal. So, sometimes he is called Gopal Nandana, means son of the cowherd. Whatever it may be, it also gets then lot of spiritual interpretations step in, that go also has the connotation of the organs, the senses, sensory organs, motor organs. So, the controller of them is also called Gopal. But anyway, the idea was he was a cowherd child, so his name became Gopal. And so she became devoted to Gopala and received the Gopal mantra from her guru. Perhaps her close relation with the landlady helped her to develop that attitude. Govinda's family guru belonged to the Goswami dynasty of Malpara, and a couple of Goswami priests had quite often stayed at the Kamarhati temple garden from time to time, from the time it was dedicated. It is hard to understand how she developed such an intense maternal attitude towards God and worshipped him as her son in the form of Gopala, and without having had any experience of a mother's affection towards a child. Some will say that this was due to her previous birth and the impressions accumulated through past lives. Be that as it may, the story actually came to pass. The women of England and the United States become interested in religion when they encounter suffering in the world or for some other reason. This urge then manifests itself in charitable works, philanthropic activities, and service to the poor and the sick. Their goal becomes to help others all the time. In India, it is opposite. The inclination towards religion appears here in the form of brahmacharya, austerities, religious rules and rites, japa, and so on. Gradually, the practitioner becomes more and more introspective and eventually seeks to renounce the world. The attitude that the goal of human life is to attain God, and therein lies real peace, pervades the atmosphere of this country and has penetrated into the very marrow of its men and women. So, Aghormani's solitary life and austerities might seem unusual to readers from other countries, but they are natural in India. Since we are not in India and this book is meant for people all over the world, this comment is made here. Aghormani felt drawn to Sri Ramakrishna upon their first meeting, but she did not know why or how far reaching this attraction would be. As she experienced this indescribable fascination, she thought, "He is a wonderful holy man and a true devotee. As soon as I have time, I shall come back to see him." And the landlady felt the same way, but it is doubtful that she ever returned. She may have felt that she would be criticized, and in addition she had to spend much time with her daughters and son-in-law and at her home in Pataldanga. Dakshineshwar is quite a distance from that place, and before visiting the master she would have had to tell everyone and make special arrangements. So, most probably she never returned to Dakshineshwar. Only the first time the two ladies they came together, and then this landlady probably never came back to see it or meet Sri Ramakrishna. Aghormani had no such difficulties. While practicing this japa, the repetition of mantra, a few days after her first visit, she had a desire to visit the master again. She left for Dakshineshwar immediately with uh, 2 or 3 pies worth of stale sandesh, a sweet, something that could be very inexpensive and easily available. She bought those and started on her way to Dakshineshwar. Because it is a custom that one should not go empty handed to see a holy person. So, observance of that custom is quite common. So, she took these inexpensive, she did not have much money. So, she took these inexpensive sweets and came drawn as it were to Dakshineshwar to see Sri Ramakrishna. So, it is when the master saw her, he exclaimed, "Oh, you have come, please give what you have brought for me." He as it were was waiting for that and said, "Bring it to me." It is so. Gopal-Ma later said, "I was terribly embarrassed. How could I give him that stale sandesh? So many people brought so many fancy dishes to feed him. But as soon as I arrived, he asked for that stale sandesh." She was speechless with fear and shame, but she reluctantly handed those stale sweets to him. Master immediately started to eat them with great relish and said to her, "Why do you spend money on sweets? Prepare some sweet coconut balls, and when you visit this place, bring 1 or 2 of them with you. Or you may bring a little of the ordinary dishes that you cook yourself, a hodgepodge curry with pumpkin leaves, or a preparation with potatoes, eggplants, drumsticks, means something that is very easily available there without spending money." So, anyway, when you cook, get something of that. Why you have to spend money buying these things? Gopal-Ma later related, there was no talk about God or religion. He went on speaking about this dish and that. I thought, what a strange monk I have come to see. He talks only about food. I am a poor widow. Where shall I get so many delicacies for him? Enough. I won't come back again. But as soon as I passed through the gate of Dakshineshwar garden, I felt as if he were pulling me back. I couldn't proceed further. I had a hard time persuading my mind to leave, but at last I returned to Kamarhati. Tremendous pull was being felt. It is, how can one understand or explain this thing? Impossible. A tremendous pull was being felt by her, drawing her to Sri Ramakrishna irresistibly. She had to summon all her force, all her power to somehow go back to her home in Kamarhati. A few days later, Aghormani again walked the 3 miles to Sri Ramakrishna, this time carrying a hodgepodge curry for him. she had decided never to go back. And then going was not easy, walking 3 miles. Yes, it is because she had no money to pay for the boat. Not that the boat was very costly, but even that much money she didn't have. So 3 miles she walked and then carried that hodgepodge curry for what Sri Ramakrishna had mentioned. And then as soon as she arrived, the master demanded food as before, and after relishing it said, "What a delicacy! It is like nectar." Tears rolled down Aghormani's cheeks as she saw the master's joy. She thought that the master had appreciated her humble offering only because she was poor. So this is how the story unfolds, a tremendous attraction, and this is working on her, although she kept on telling that, oh, this is monk just keeps on asking about the food, and never heard a word of God being spoken from by him. What is this? But, well, she could not resist that pull, and it is again, when we read the next paragraphs, we will see this is how her devotion was. Everything was getting, seen as God. The Gopala that she was seeing in her shrine, now that very Gopal was appearing in the form of Sri Ramakrishna to her. Very difficult for us to believe this, but this is what is happening. And as a child would ask for food from the mother, hey, give me. So Sri Ramakrishna was asking for that. As we read this tremendous story, it is we are forced to accept that this is how it really happened, although how much difficult it is to believe. But the facts cannot be fought with. These are the facts, and this is, and Swami Saradananda was witness to many of these, that how this transformation took place. Vivekananda was seeing these things. All these we shall see as we proceed further. Today's time is over, so we shall read the next part later as we move further. So we shall meditate on this devotion for a few seconds, and after that, if you have questions, feel free to ask. Yes, any questions? No questions here. Is there any question there? No. Yes, what question to ask on this, So, let us conclude with the regular closing prayer. I had already mentioned about attending the retreat. So, if you have not registered till now, then please register as soon as possible. The retreat is more or less full. May the Divine, who is Father in heaven of the Christians, Holy One of the Jewish faith, Allah of the Muslims, Buddha of the Buddhists, Tao of the Taoists, Great Spirit of the Native Americans, Ahura Mazda of the Zoroastrians, and Brahman of the Hindus. Lead us from the unreal to the real, from darkness to light, from death to immortality. May the all-loving being manifest himself unto us and grant us abiding understanding and all-consuming divine love. Peace, peace, peace be unto all.